Welcome back to Web3 Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wolfson, and today in the studio, I've got my little Bichon Frise, Cami. She's joining us here today. So she's making her quick appearance at the beginning of this podcast. But today's interview, I will be speaking with Blake Benthall. He is the founder of FathomX, and he previously created Silk Road 2.0. Blake has actually been on the podcast before, but he's so fascinating and has such a great story to tell that I actually invited him back for a second time. And I'm just really excited for this episode because Blake just shares so much knowledge. We talk about Bitcoin, we talk about privacy coins, we talk about the United States and what's happening here with crypto regulation. So this is a great episode, and I encourage you guys to listen to the entire interview. It's really fascinating. Okay, before getting started with today's interview, I also want to take the time to thank Quai Network for letting us film today's interview at this beautiful podcasting space in Austin, Texas. So excited to be here, and I'm just so grateful for Quai for letting us use this space to film the interviews. So thank you again, and yeah. Also, if you guys like the content that you're seeing today, I want to remind you to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and just stay in touch with me on Twitter at RachelWolf00, or actually, should I say X now, not Twitter. But stay in touch because I've got some really great content coming out that you guys will not want to miss. Okay, without further ado, let's get started with today's interview. Hey, Blake, how's it going?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you for coming back for the second time. You've been on before and the podcast did so well. I wanted to have you back on.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So before we get started, for the listeners that did not see the first episode that we did with you, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you got involved in the crypto and blockchain space?
Yeah. So I moved to San Francisco, actually dropped college to move out there to follow startup dreams, and kind of got enamored by hearing about Silk Road 1, the darknet market. That was really one of the first early use cases of Bitcoin getting taken down by the federal government. And for whatever reason, at age 25, I felt compelled to rebuild and to relaunch it, and ran Silk Road 2 for around a year before the FBI arrested me, which of course changed my life and was a very, very, the start of a very difficult chapter for me. But I ended up getting a really rare opportunity to work for the FBI for around 7 years instead of spending that whole time in jail. I spent about 8 months in jail. So yeah, really early Bitcoin builder, and have also seen the adverse consequences of not looking into regulations when building in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I mean, you just have, and like we discussed in the first podcast episode, I encourage everyone to watch and listen to that if they haven't already seen it with you. But it's incredible. You worked for the FBI, helping them uncover and crack these like crypto illicit criminal cases. How long did you do that for?
Yeah, for nearly a decade. I was sentenced in 2021, and part of my probation for 3 years was to continue helping out. So it honestly is such an opportunity for technologists to build bridges with their regulators and enforcers. And I encourage more people to help educate their governments around the world about cryptocurrency, because cryptocurrency isn't built for crime. It's found some early product market fit in criminal circles, but it's ultimately, built for peer-to-peer payments without needing to trust any intermediaries. And I think that's revolutionary for businesses, individuals, but also for governments. So the more that technologists can interact with their regulators and with their governments, I think it really helps destigmatize our entire industry and the future we're building towards.
Definitely. So you also have a company now called FathomX.
Yeah.
I always want to say Falcon,
yeah.
But FathomX. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think going back to the basics, we need more businesses accepting cryptocurrency and more workers that are willing to accept cryptocurrency for pay. It's been 10 years since I launched Silk Road 2, and it still drives me crazy that it's so hard to actually spend cryptocurrency or even to work for it. So at the most basic level, businesses need to know that they can be accountable when using cryptocurrency, that it's not this shady thing, and that their accountants can fully understand what they're up to. As a result of my criminal record from 10 years ago, I found it really hard to maintain a bank account and to be banked. And what's amazing about cryptocurrency is you don't need a bank anymore. Like, you read the Satoshi white paper of like when Bitcoin was invented, and it's all about the peer-to-peer payments use case and removing intermediaries to where your transactions can't be censored. So FathomX is accounting software that makes it possible for bankless companies to be fully transparent and audited on chain. So you can see all the cryptocurrency coming in and out of your wallets and make sure that cryptocurrency is easy to explain to your accounting teams and to your regulators.
Okay, so basically in terms of the people that would use FathomX, would that be retail investors, or would that be like, people doing crypto taxes and stuff like that, or companies that need more insights into crypto transactions?
I'm all about businesses accepting cryptocurrency, and the best practice when accepting it is to generate a new wallet address for every payment. That serves for your customers' privacy, and it serves for your business's privacy. So your competitors and even thieves can't see your full crypto balance sheet. They can't see all the assets your business has. So when generating a new account for every payment, a new wallet address for every payment, you end up with hundreds of thousands of addresses that all are liabilities your business has to watch forever. Because, what if money arrives and you need to explain it? So unlike traditional banking, where your bank will give you a transaction history that they just manage and they make sure is truthful, in cryptocurrency, you really have to keep track of all the different blockchains, all the different accounts, and that's what FathomX does and brings it into one place. And we even support privacy technologies. So I think privacy is extremely important for businesses and individuals. Privacy is one of the biggest missing pieces in most of the blockchain projects today, where we're all early adopters in this space. So we don't think too deeply about walking around with like an Ethereum username on our name tag at a conference or posting our crypto addresses publicly. But what we're essentially doing with every purchase and every payment on the Bitcoin blockchain or on many of these is we're screenshotting our transaction history and posting it to social media, right? Like, purchases you make today with cryptocurrency are forever public and auditable on these public blockchains. So FathomX also really aims to educate people and businesses on how little privacy they have on public blockchains and help them to understand kind of their data footprint of, okay, these purchases you've made, these payments you've made are going to be forever visible to your governments, your competitors, to anyone that wants to do due diligence on your business, whether or not you gave them permission to.
Okay, so let's take a step back a little bit before we talk about privacy, because that's really important, and I know that you're kind of an expert there. Crypto for payments. Why do you think that this is like the ideal use case? Because, for instance, with Bitcoin, a lot of people people that have it hold it. They don't use it for payments. I don't want to spend my Bitcoin. So why do you think crypto is ideal for payments?
Yeah, it really comes back to Satoshi's white paper. The concept of Bitcoin as a reserve or as an inflation hedge was never mentioned by Satoshi. And he actually didn't even mention the 21 million supply cap in the white paper itself. It was just in the early code. And I don't support that ever changing. I think that's a social promise we've made to all Bitcoin holders. But Bitcoin for payments and cryptocurrency for payments is the true purpose of it existing in the first place. I think we've found these product market fits with it being a gold standard in many ways as the first mover that has remained secure for many years. But assuming that Bitcoin will always be the number one cryptocurrency, I think is very dangerous for users and for investors. And the concept of only holding Bitcoin, I think, holds the whole industry back, because you're not evangelizing cryptocurrency by spending it and receiving it in pay. In fact, every time someone uses a US dollar instead of a Bitcoin to get paid in dollars or to spend dollars, you're hurting Bitcoin, because you're not spreading the word about it and you're not using it for its intended use case. If you want to save a large portion of the Bitcoin you have, that could be a great idea. But ultimately, Bitcoin was created to remove banks from the system. You don't need banks anymore if you're using Bitcoin. And holders, like I try to spend as much of our Bitcoin as possible that we receive from customer payments, because it helps me meet the developers that I hire and the vendors that we work with as a business that are aligned. Like, they all want to be part of this circular economy. So, to me, Bitcoin has found this interesting second product market fit as a potential reserve But it was really, really created to be a peer-to-peer electronic cash, like a payment system.
Got it. So do you pay people with Bitcoin?
I try to pay people with Bitcoin as often as possible. Yeah, and often people speak to its volatility as being an issue, so I'll kind of fall back to stable coins. But right now we're able to spend around like 30 to 35% of the Bitcoin that we have. Like, and most people want, fiat USD in their bank accounts instead, which is disappointing. Like, it's one of those signs to me that maybe this vendor or contractor we're working with might not be as aligned with our mission as we are.
Yeah, I mean, I used to get paid in Bitcoin. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. But that being said, I think, it can be a little bit tricky to pay people with Bitcoin because for me, I wanted to hold it. I didn't want to spend it. That was my issue. And so I couldn't, obviously I couldn't like pay my rent with it. I couldn't, go to most stores in the United States. I mean, there's Coinbase Commerce, which is awesome, and you can make crypto payments. But anyways, we can get into that another time. But I think paying people in Bitcoin is amazing, and it can change their lives.
What's wild about it is usually when you pay someone, they have to wait 3 days or so for it to hit their bank account, right? And the banks have become this unnecessary third party today now that cryptocurrency exists. So actually paying workers daily now becomes possible with Bitcoin, or even hourly. So there are all these new options for remittances that I would love to see more innovation with, but it demands really complicated accounting processes that we're trying to make simple with FathomX.
Yeah. Okay. Now you mentioned stable coins. What are your thoughts on stable coins?
Yeah, I love stablecoins.
Yeah.
I think the pure purpose of a blockchain is to prevent double spending. So to prove that something happened at a given point in time. Blockchains are incredible at. So whether or not you're using the blockchain also as the stored value like Bitcoin does, or just using it kind of as a proof that something happened, like a public ledger, stablecoins are a great example of, I think, just innovation in the programmable blockchain space, kind of from the Ethereum ecosystem. So it's a lot easier for me to convince vendors to accept stablecoins because they hear of the horrors of crypto winter and the boom and bust cycle that I think all cryptocurrencies will continue to experience because it's a 24/7 market. Like, it never closes, and it's global. Like, traders in cryptocurrencies are not all held to one jurisdiction's laws. So pump and dumps are happening. There are plenty of scams out there. But the core technology of proving that something happened at a given time will always work. So stablecoins really validate that for me. And I'm all about more stablecoin issuers existing. I think it's been a regulatory climate in the US really since cryptocurrency was invented. It's been a very adverse regulatory environment. And I'm hoping that clearer pathways will exist to more stablecoin issuers existing on more blockchains, but also potentially for nation states to feel comfortable natively issuing their dollars or their currencies on blockchains. Because ultimately, the fact that the United States of America does not directly issue a stablecoin opens this huge profit opportunity for companies like Circle that enable people to use, dollar pegged assets on blockchains to escape the volatility without going to a bank, by going to a DEX and quickly swapping. But Circle is able to profit immensely from the interest on all of those deposits. Whereas, ultimately, I think taxpayers, like American citizens, should be benefiting from a nation issued stablecoin, in my opinion.
A nation issued stablecoin. That's interesting. Do you think it's interesting to see how, and we can talk, let's talk about this. So you have been in the crypto space for a very long time, longer than myself, longer than most people. I mean, you founded Silk Road 2.0. Now, do you think the United States has come a tremendous way from the beginning of when you started to now in terms of regulations, clarity, and being crypto friendly? That's my first question.
Yeah, it's so awesome seeing Bitcoin make it into mainstream politics even hearing about it. I mean, when I started with Silk Road 2, Bitcoin was laughable. People would laugh at it. And the early product market fit it found of people buying and selling drugs online was really very at-risk people, like knowing that they were committing crimes in most cases, feeling comfortable using this internet money that ultimately became, is completely traceable and not the best technology for at-risk payments. But it has been very surreal to see cryptocurrency become mainstream and mentioned in mainstream politics in America. So I was actually, during my nearly a decade of living and hiding in New York and working off my life mistake by helping the U.S. government in with cryptocurrency investigations. During that time is when Bitcoin hit $10,000 for the first time, and my mind was blown. Like, of course, I didn't have any. The government seized all of it, but I always have like a mental ticker of like, oh, like what would have I had they not seized it, or like how big of a win has this been for America, right? They actually didn't auction off all of my Bitcoin until after my case was completely wrapped up. So, kind of part of me as an American citizen, like with my tally internally, like, oh, wow, like this is a lot of money for America. The fact that they were forced to hold it for 10 years, since from when they seized it from me. But it's been surreal to see Bitcoin and cryptocurrency make it more mainstream and to be mentioned by regulators, but still very disappointing. And in many ways, it's embarrassing to be building cryptocurrency in America right now, because a lot of builders internationally, like the smartest people in cryptocurrency, can often be found overseas. And those people are afraid to visit America. Like when we have conferences here, people are less likely to fly in and attend from other countries, because America has built a reputation on being punitive towards cryptocurrency, to where developers are not only uncertain about what the rules are here or how to follow them, but people are afraid to visit this country. So we can't be the Silicon Valley of cryptocurrency until we have clear regulation here. The internet revolutionized communication, and most of that revolution happened here in America. I believe we're missing out on the opportunity to revolutionize finance by having extremely unclear rules here and being an environment where builders are actually afraid to physically even fly in and visit.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. Well, it kind of leads into my next question, because we were talking about stable coins and how you were saying the United States is missing out on this opportunity of like a US backed stable coin, which I was going to ask you, do you think we're ever going to see that happen? But I mean, it seems like probably not for a while, but I don't know. I mean, Trump seems to be very crypto friendly.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I don't expect it to happen anytime soon. I think stablecoin issuers, like, they have great businesses. And, Circle, as a primary example, is operating within the U.S. regulatory framework and very trusted. So there's not a large incentive or like emergency need for the U.S. to directly issue a stablecoin. And I personally believe another country will beat us to the punch. And right now, one of the primary exports of blockchains, like one of the big product market fits, is the U.S. dollar itself. So people in countries like Venezuela can actually access the US dollar for the first time by getting some USDC or getting some Tether. But I don't see it being like high up regulators' to-do list of like, oh, we need to issue something. And there's also a lot of misunderstanding about what a CDBC is versus a stable coin.
Can you explain it?
Yeah. So like when a country issues a digital currency, so that is not going to be on a blockchain. But when a stable coin is issued, it's completely transparent and public, like the issuance and the minting and burning of it on public blockchains. So a lot of the trust issues people have with government issued digital money go away when it's a stable coin, depending on what kind of censorship features might be built into it. So yes, Circle has the ability to freeze someone's money. That's very controversial, but how they operate within the US regulatory framework safely. So if a country issues something on a blockchain instead of just like a digital dollar, I think it's a completely different threat model, but also like pros and cons list versus the CBDC arguments.
Yeah. Let's talk about privacy. So, we're talking about how crypto is great for payments, but everything is traceable, transparent. It's all on a blockchain. It lives there forever. It's never going to go away. So how do we ensure that institutions can use crypto for payments but keep transactions private?
Yeah, what the mistakes that people are making on blockchains right now will be public forever. And even just the purchases are just forever immortalized on public blockchains. So there's an immense need for awareness on that downside to using cryptocurrency. we tell our kids today to be careful what they post on social media at any age, because that could come back and bite you later in life. Well, now cryptocurrency has definitely found product market fit for some of people's most embarrassing transactions. And some very at-risk people are using cryptocurrency, but not realizing that, they're making their activity public forever, just like social media does. So I'm a huge fan of privacy coins. I'm a big Zcash believer. I think Monero is great as well. And currencies that have baked in mathematically the privacy feature, I think are going to end up being essential tools to support human rights around the world, because I believe privacy is a human right. Cryptocurrency marks the end of other people being able to tell you what to do with your money. Banks can't tell you what to do with your money. Your government can't. A controlling spouse can't. The problem today is that everyone can see what you're doing with your money when you're using Bitcoin or Ethereum or any of the mainstream cryptocurrencies. But as soon as you dip into a privacy coin like Zcash, you actually get the fungibility that cash gives you, where no one can just see forever how you received or spent your cash. So I think privacy is vital.
Can you explain how that works? So I've actually never used privacy coins. I mean, obviously I know about them. I know Zcash, Monero, but explain how it works.
Yeah, so they take two different approaches. I'm most familiar with the Zcash approach. So the same types of technologies that are allowing a lot of layer twos to scale. So ZK snarks, like the whole ZK world, that very complicated, amazing math is baked in to Zcash's shielded pools. So when you're sending shielded Zcash around, they are able to maintain that you had the money you were trying to spend, that it's irrevocably spent, and that the recipient, has the control to spend that money. So you've successfully transferred it without revealing who you were interacting with. You can't see who paid you. You can't see, for your customers as a business, you can't see where they got their money from. So you avoid the whole like cyber stalking and like ad tech potential nightmare that most public blockchains have by baking privacy in at that layer one, where everyone gets privacy on the chain.
Yeah, it seems like a great use case, but why are we not seeing that with like Bitcoin or Ethereum or just like more privacy tokens or coins emerging? I mean, I haven't heard of a new privacy coin in a very long time. Maybe I'm just out of touch.
Yeah, I think chains are starting to specialize. So Bitcoin is really trying to be the gold standard, like the reserve currency of the industry. Ethereum has really rocked the programmability. It has spurred a ton of innovations, including DEXs and domain name alternatives and all sorts of things. And then I see Zcash and privacy chains as exporting privacy into these blockchains. So I don't see any of these projects as needing to be the only cryptocurrency or the one true way. But the bridges that are being built between cryptocurrencies, specifically DEXs like Maya Chain and others that are connecting privacy coins, Soraya is another one coming up in the Monero ecosystem, that connect the privacy features of the privacy blockchains to the programmability features of the Ethereum blockchain and the gold standard equivalent of the Bitcoin blockchain. It interconnects them all. So when someone wants privacy, they can dip in for that. When they want to shift their assets over into cryptocurrency's gold standard, they can buy Bitcoin. So to me, it's the DEXs that, hopefully cryptocurrencies actually replacing banks and the need for intermediaries. But the intermediary that's uncomfortable to talk about in the crypto world right now are centralized exchanges like Coinbase, Gemini, Kraken. There are barely any exchanges that a U.S. citizen can actually use in the U.S. It's completely monopolized. Everyone's afraid to start exchanges. And what's happening is centralized exchanges are starting to get replaced by decentralized exchanges. And there will always be the question of like, well, where do you get Bitcoin from with U.S. dollars without a Coinbase? And my answer is that you work for it. Like you get your paycheck in Bitcoin and you take it to a DEX. And if you want privacy, you swap it into a privacy coin. If you want cool Ethereum programmability, you swap it into that ecosystem. It's the DEXs in many ways that I think are actually fulfilling Satoshi's vision of removing intermediaries from the whole financial equation. But we're still in crypto's very early days.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about this. And you say we're still in crypto's early days. I mean, I've been in it since 2017, and to see what it's become and to see the price of Bitcoin now, it just seems like we're there. But I mean, it is true. We're still very early. I mean, who knows what will happen next? And, everyone's still trying to figure this out that's not in the crypto space, especially given the price of Bitcoin and Ethereum now. So it's interesting to hear you say that. But I wanted to ask you this, and I just want to get your take on it. So what are your thoughts on crypto and taxes? And if there's privacy baked into cryptocurrency, how is that going to impact the whole tax system that we have in the United States and these new rules and regulations that we see now?
Yeah, so I'm from Texas, known for its independence. And I think there's like a kind of a Texan mindset I have I think that it's really important it's an important balance of power that citizens should be able to self-report their income. And that's how our tax system works today in America. We're not receiving a bill from the IRS. We're self-reporting what happened, with criminal penalties if you're dishonest, and, the chance at an audit if your records are mismatching the federal government's. But we are in a climate of self-reporting, which I think is really healthy and a very big part of, the balance of control. So in terms of crypto taxes, I think, it needs to be a lot clearer what is and is not income and at what point capital gains apply. There's a lot of new types of income that never really existed in human history, with like LPing and like crazy yield farming, and the number of transactions someone can have in a given year has skyrocketed by just clicking a few things and using a few DEXs or otherwise in the crypto ecosystem. So I think it's very important to pay taxes. I'm very supportive of nations existing and providing basic services. So I'd love to see clearer regulation with it. But I'd also really prefer for individuals to still be self-reporting their income. Blockchains make it possible for governments or anyone to fully see your income and see all of your transactions if you're not using a privacy blockchain. So I don't want us to find ourselves in a world where we're getting that bill from the IRS proactively about all of our crypto activity because we just put it out there publicly on blockchains. I think it's really important for us to show that we're trustworthy as an industry, to have accurate accounting, which is what I'm trying to build towards with FathomX, but also have a track record of following the rules and not have any more FTXs around. I think all the founders in this space need to be honest and accountable, and we really need a lot of reputation repair as an industry. So it's a space where the technology allows for some really fast get rich quick schemes, as we see happening kind of in the meme coin world right now. But it's so easy to completely bypass all of the safeguards that keep consumers safe in the process. And it's really important to keep a lot of those there. So in crypto, we talk a lot about regulatory reform, but I don't think we reflect enough on the parts of regulation that actually keep us really safe and keep people that are not as tech savvy in different generations, especially safe and with recourse from financial fraud.
Yeah. It's really interesting. Everything you're saying is fascinating. I'm wondering if you could share with us the process that you go through in order to trace and track transactions to catch illicit activity. And maybe you did this with the FBI, I don't know, but what does that process look like? If you could share a little bit with us. If not, I understand, but I'm curious.
Yeah, I can't speak directly to ways that I helped, but today when using cryptocurrency, I'm always thinking about what footprint I'm leaving on a public blockchain. And I'm looking at my own tool. I'm looking at our ledger of all of my transactions and seeing, okay, like this money came from this exchange. It went into our account. When customers make payments to us in cryptocurrency, we can almost always see what they last did with their money, which is really uncomfortable for me, right? Like I don't have the ability to see where a customer got their money from if they're paying with a credit card or paying with cash or any other financial instrument. It's only with cryptocurrency I have the weirdness of being able to click a little bit further back and see, okay, like I guess they're a Coinbase user, or I guess they're a Silk Road user, and that's a problem, right? So being cognizant of the footprint you're leaving on blockchains is a lot of work, and it makes cryptocurrency's user experience stressful in a lot of ways. So the ways that people tend to investigate cryptocurrency is by, it sounds really crazy, but you just click around. I mean, you look a little deeper in the public blockchain, and you try to find entities that you recognize. So you might recognize Coinbase, and then use the traditional legal system to subpoena Coinbase and ask them, hey, who's this customer? And that's like 99% of how crypto tracing leads to identifying an individual. And it's happening a lot on the civil side, right? I saw behind the fence of the criminal investigation side, but there are plenty of people upset at each other in the crypto ecosystem and accusing each other of scams. So I'm increasingly seeing a lot of like private investigators even using tracing tools and working with lawyers to send subpoenas and essentially dox people on the chain. So you have some pseudonymity when using Bitcoin until at any point in the future your Bitcoin address is, revealed, and then your whole history of activity and your whole cluster of all your connected wallets invites scrutiny.
So is that why you think we're seeing, we're seeing criminal cases obviously with US dollars as well, but I feel like we see these things in the media all the time, like, oh, they requested Bitcoin in order to get so-and-so, or somebody was kidnapped for Bitcoin. Criminals are so focused on using crypto because they think it's completely anonymous, which it is to a certain extent, like you said, but do they not realize that it's traceable and probably more easily traceable than cash?
Yeah,
if they use it.
Yeah, Bitcoin's way more traceable than cash. Cryptocurrency ultimately is a terrible technology for committing crimes. It's extremely transparent. There are ways to feel safe when you're using cryptocurrency, but you're always leaving a way bigger trail than you realize. And there are just so many third parties supplying the data, like into your wallet apps that you're using, and all of the touch points, right? Like don't commit crimes using cryptocurrency or at all, right? And that's part of why I'm so appalled at the negative regulatory climate towards cryptocurrency in America is, like, historically, is that like the amount of crime that happens with cash is way larger because cash is the ideal technology for crime ultimately. And where it gets tricky is, yes, I'm an advocate of privacy coins, and we're seeing a lot of criminals switch over to using technologies like Monero for cybercrime. Monero has taken over as the currency of choice in the Silk Roads of today. And Monero is not a perfect technology either. Like, people using Monero are making the bet that it'll never be cracked and the full transaction history will never be revealed, which might be a safe bet. I don't know. But ultimately, you're still leaving a public record on a blockchain, whether it's encrypted or not. And it's a big part of the reason I support Monero and Zcash in FathomX is I believe businesses should support private payments inbound, just like they receive cash just fine, but be able to keep a full transaction history of it should be fully auditable in terms of when you received what money so that you can report it accurately to regulators.
Yeah. Wasn't the developer, was he a Monero developer? He was recently released from prison. Was it a Monero developer?
I think one of their core people. Yeah. My memory's a little fuzzy on it. I don't want to drop the name, but
his name.
It's a community of relatively anonymous people building currencies. And I actually don't really support anonymity for crypto builders. I think if you're building such an important technology, it's really important to dox yourself early, right? There shouldn't be this whole question mark around who built this. I think I only support anonymity for Satoshi, who I personally believe Satoshi Nakamoto is alive and probably a bit appalled at what Bitcoin has become, because again, Bitcoin was created for peer-to-peer payments. It was not created for speculation or created to be a gold reserve. And what appalls me 10 years after building Silk Road is I still can't spin Bitcoin anywhere, right? Like, I approached my landlord to try to pay rent in Bitcoin, and they look at you like you're a criminal, like it looks very shady. So to me, like, the Monero community and communities that tend to use a lot of pseudonyms make me a little bit nervous. And it's a little bit where I gravitate towards the Zcashers, because a lot of them are based in the US. All of the core developers are known, and they actually do a little bit of advocacy in DC as themselves. Like they're not showing up with an anonymous mask on trying to, talk about their technology to lawmakers.
It's interesting what you said about paying your rent in Bitcoin. So when I was being paid in Bitcoin a while ago, I did ask. It was when I wanted to move to Austin for the first time. I've been in Austin now back and forth for 4 years.
Yeah.
But this was back in the early days when Bitcoin wasn't worth so much, but I had it and I wanted to pay my rent in Bitcoin. And I remember going into one of the apartment complexes here, talking to the leasing office and saying, oh, I've got Bitcoin. Can I pay my rent with it? And they looked at me like I was crazy. Like, how do we accept it? Like, am I a criminal? And it's just interesting how Bitcoin has evolved, because back then I wanted to pay my rent in Bitcoin. Now I do not want to pay my rent in Bitcoin. Now I'm scared to even sell my Bitcoin because I think the price is going to go up and I want to hold on to it for as long as I can. But for me, like I'm just saying, I think that that's how the narrative changed in my mind. Back then, when it wasn't worth so much, I wanted to sell it. I wanted to pay my rent. I remember buying clothes using my Bitcoin from vendors at these crypto events. And I bought Bitcoin shirts and I would just send them some Bitcoin. Didn't think twice about it. But now I think twice about it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I think it went from being yes, the system of payment to now we're seeing Trump and strategic Bitcoin reserves and all of these things where it's do people even want to spend or sell their Bitcoin?
Yeah, money is money. And I think one of the most dangerous beliefs today is that Bitcoin should never be spent. I think looking at any asset as something that you should never sell is a terrible financial decision. And too many loud voices in our industry really underscore that you should never sell Bitcoin. One of the things I really miss about early Bitcoin meetups from 2012 is being able to buy and sell stuff. They were a little it was essentially a little fair. I really love the first Bitcoin pizza purchase as an example, right? The people love to harp on that as, oh, what a terrible use of Bitcoin. But anyone that has spent a US dollar in the past 10 years rather than buying Bitcoin with it could be criticized in the same way. And you can use that as a criticism, oh, why did you buy a pizza 10 years ago instead of buying Apple stock or anything else, right? So it's a really weak argument. I believe every purchase that we make with any cryptocurrency evangelizes that currency, and that person may tell 10 more people about Bitcoin. So that to me is way more valuable than me holding $10 worth of my Bitcoin. But I think people getting paid in Bitcoin is even more impactful, right? If your entire salary came in Bitcoin, you would be able to consciously decide, okay, how much of this do I set aside to save and how much of this do I spend on other things? You would treat it like regular money. Bitcoin is not holy. It's not this sacred stack where you're committing a sin against Satoshi by ever selling. Satoshi, in fact, created it for you to transact with it. And it's totally fine to set the majority of it aside. But I really encourage Bitcoin users to go look at where they're spending money and try to convince local businesses especially to accept it, because that brings more people into our ecosystem and ultimately drives the price up.
I agree. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin and DeFi use cases? So right now we're seeing, you can have your Bitcoin and then get a loan for it and buy a house. What are your thoughts on these use cases where you don't have to sell your Bitcoin, but you can still use it?
Yeah, getting a loan on your Bitcoin can be really exciting from a tax standpoint. But I think that's, again, where the belief that Bitcoin can only appreciate in value is going to get a lot of people hurt. If we were having this interview during crypto winter, it would be fresher in our minds that Bitcoin's price can actually go down. And you can actually default on that loan or need to produce additional collateral. So I think people should be really careful treating Bitcoin like a number that only goes up. You need to be cognizant of the volatility that exists, even if long-term, I completely believe in holding Bitcoin over 5-year time periods, personally being a great idea. But yeah, a lot of it is the groupthink that Bitcoin is bad to sell, that you're failing in some way. And you'll be even shamed on social media for selling Bitcoin is wild. There's no other financial instrument I can think of like that. And I think in a lot of ways, it's putting people in very dangerous financial positions, because Bitcoin will crash again. And I believe it will hit higher highs than we've imagined. But there will be another crypto winter and there will be another crypto summer. And history has just shown these are very volatile assets. And that's part of what makes me big believers in stablecoins. In terms of Bitcoin's connections to DeFi, I think Bitcoin really needs to lean in to being more socialized, to having more bridges and connections to the chains that a lot of people have considered to be like a little dirty because it's not Bitcoin, right? Like you won't see a lot of Bitcoiners at ETH Denver next week, and you won't see a lot of Ethereum people at Bitcoin 2025 in Vegas this year. And those are the walls that need to come down because we're ultimately all in this together. And each of our projects really serves its own use case, where Bitcoin is probably the gold reserve for a very long time. And Ethereum is a programmability. And then there's extremely scalable chains like Solana, and then privacy chains when you don't want the whole world seeing what your assets are.
I love how you just broke that down with these different chains and kind of classified them, especially for our listeners that don't really understand. That was great. With Solana, what are your thoughts there? I mean, let's kind of dig into Solana a little bit. Is that, how are things going there? Is that chain, performing well? Are we going to, what is it? It's just for meme coins?
Yeah, Bitcoin's biggest problem and cryptocurrency's biggest problem is its terrible user experience right now. That's why I still believe we're in the very early days of cryptocurrency. And I think it's one of the biggest barriers to normies, like regular people accepting like Bitcoin to pay rent or buy stuff. So Solana to me is one of those, it's largely VC backed, and I'm a purist, like I'm an open source believer, I'm a OG Bitcoiner. So I had very skeptical eyes towards Solana until I tried it. And it reminded me of my first time trying Ethereum, where when you'd only used technologies that take a long time for the money to get from point A to point B, which like in our world, like in Bitcoin, a long time is like 30 minutes to an hour for like a full confirmation, which is still light years faster than an ACH transfer, or like, the 3-day wait time Americans have to wait between bank transfers. So Solana really impresses me from a user experience standpoint. And I think they really nail it with culture. The apps feel with it in terms of design, and it just works. Like money sends frighteningly fast between parties. I'm not a big fan of the meme coin scene, but I think the main reason I'm skeptical there is it's really glorifying pumping and dumping, right? Like we've taken what would be considered financial crime in public markets, and we've made it so easy for a new meme coin to be launched and to die in the matter of hours that people that are still minors are clicking around launching these things. And there's all these news articles of like, oh, this like kid made hundreds of thousands of dollars on a meme coin. I don't think that should be glorified, because it's the kind of breakneck, get rich quick behavior that has gotten our industry into a lot of regulatory scrutiny in the first place. Like who knows how many rules were just broken in those 12 hours of marketing and dumping a meme coin from your basement.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because we recently saw the Trump meme coin and Melania, and it's interesting that, these are meme coins and we're seeing a lot of pump and dump, yet the president of the United States launched one. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really tricky, right? And I do believe people have big teams around them. I don't know how deeply aware President Trump was of that coin getting launched, but it was disappointing to me to see it launched. And I love seeing utility in cryptocurrency projects, right? Like I think if a coin actually serves a purpose, it graduates from just being a meme coin into being like, oh, there was a vision for this project. So I don't know, maybe the Trump family has a larger vision for their coin, or it was a runaway success that is just an interesting mark in history.
Or it could, it could have just been like an attention thing.
Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely generated a lot of attention, if that was the goal. I also wanted to ask you about, this is shifting gears. We recently saw, speaking of President Trump, pardon Ross Ulbricht. Am I pronouncing his last name correctly?
Ulbricht, yeah.
Ulbricht. So he created Silk Road, the original Silk Road. I don't know if you knew him, but what are your thoughts on that and him being released?
Yeah, I'm really happy that Ross is okay. I've been praying for him. Like I'm a person of faith, so I've been praying for him even as an inmate, and my family has been too for many years. So I send so much love towards the Ulbricht family. I experienced 8 months in jail. I have so many thoughts on criminal justice reform, and I can only imagine what over a decade in jail can do to someone. So I just really hope that he takes it slow and he knows he has a lot of support around him. Never actually met him, and look forward to someday. But yeah, that was really positive news for me.
Yeah, definitely. It was positive news for the entire industry, but I'm sure with you it was a little more personal. Yeah, so I know that we're running low on time, and I've got Cami, my little Bichon Frise here, and she's getting anxious. I can hold her up next time people can see her. But anyways, what are your final thoughts? Like, what do you want to leave our listeners with today, and what's next for FathomX and yourself?
Yeah, I want everyone to accept cryptocurrency. Like, pay your contractors and employees with crypto. Go try to spend it somewhere. I think that is the ultimate user experience that will 10x the value of all of our projects, is making crypto actually mainstream. Crypto is broken into the mainstream dialogue, but we're not using it yet. So accept crypto, pay people with crypto. No project is forever. Be cautious even about Bitcoin, and take accurate accounting of all of your crypto behavior, hopefully with my tool, FathomX.
Wonderful. Blake, how can our listeners reach out and get in touch with you if they want to follow you on social media, or how would they do that?
Yeah, I'm Emersonian on Twitter, and FathomX is at fathomx.com.
Great. Blake, thank you so much. This was a pleasure as always.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Special thanks to 4Labs Digital for producing Web3 Deep Dive podcast. I'd also like to thank the sponsors behind Web3 Deep Dive. You can click the links in the show notes to learn more about each of the Web3 initiatives from these sponsors. Finally, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share.